Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 1, entitled Questions by Vidura. We're on text 21. Rainam namaskritya naram chaivanottamam devim sarasvatim vyasam tato jayamudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, we should first offer respectful obeisances to the personality of Godhead Narayan, to Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, and to Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavat yutamashloki bhaktir bhavati nishti. Okay, text 21, chapter 1, canto 3. Tatra Ata Shushrava Surit Dinastim Banam Yatha Venujavani Samshrayam Samspardaya Dagdham Atha Anushochan Sarasvatim Patyak Yaya Tushnim Tadrata Sushrava Surid Vinashtim Vanam Yata Venujavani Samshrayam Samspardaya Dagdhamatano Shochan Sarasvatim Pratyagiyaya Tushnim Tatrata Shushrava Surid Vinashtim Vanam Yata Venujavani Samshrayam Sampardaya Dagdam Matanu Shochan Sarasvatim Pratyagiyaya Tushni Tatrata Shushrava Surid Vinashtim Vanam Yata Venujavani Samshrayam Sampardaya Dagdamatanu Shochan Sarasvatim Pratyagiyaya Tushni
Sushrava Sulipinastim
Sushrava Surid Vinashim
Vanam Yata Venujavani Samshrayam
Vanam Yata Venujavani Samshrayam
Samspardaya Dagdamatanu Shochan
Samspardaya Dagdamatanu Shochan
Sarasvatim Pratyagiyaya Tushnim
Sarasvatim Pratyagiyaya Tushnim Tatrata Shushrava Suridinashim Vanam Yata Venujavani Samshrayam Samspardaya dagdam atanu shochan. Sarasvatim pratyagiyaya tushnim. Tatrata sushrava surivinastim. Vanam yatavenu japani samshrayam. Samspardaya dagdamatanu shochan. Sarasvatim pratyagiyaya tushnim. Someone online like to recite the verse. Tatra. There. Ata. Thereafter. Sushrava. Heard. Surit. Kinsmen. Vinashtim. All dead. Vanam. Forest. Yata. As much as. Denuja Vani. Fire due to the bamboos. Samshrayam. Friction with one another. Samspardaya. By violent passion. Dagdam. Burn. Ata. Thus. Anu Shochan. Thinking. Sarasvatim. The river Sarasvati. Pratyak. Westward. Iyaya. Went. Tushnim. Silently. Translation. At the place of pilgrimage at Prabhas, it came to his knowledge that all his relatives had died due to violent passion, just as an entire forest burns due to the fire produced by the friction of bamboos. After this, he proceeded west where the river Sarasvati flows. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Both the Kauravas and the Yadavas were relatives of Vidura, and Vidura heard of their extinction due to fratricidal war. The comparison of the friction of forest bamboos to that of passionate human societies is appropriate. The whole world is compared to a forest. At any moment, there may be a flare-up of fire in the forest due to friction. No one goes to the forest to set it on fire, but due only to friction between bamboos, fire takes place and burns an entire forest. Similarly, in the greater forest of worldly transaction, the fire of war takes place because of the violent passion of the conditioned soul's illusion by the external energy. Such a worldly fire can be extinguished only by the water of the mercy cloud of saints, just as a forest fire can be extinguished only by rains falling from a cloud. Amanganatimirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Putale Svayam Upakadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaisnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaragnatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Saganalalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagat Pate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tayubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patidanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 3 Chapter 1 Text 21 Tatrata Sushrava Sarid Vinashtim Badam Yatavenu Javani Samshrayam Samspardaya Dagdam Atanu Shochan Sarasvatim Pratyag Iyayatushnim. At the place of pilgrimage at Prabhas, it came to his knowledge that all his relatives had died due to violent passion, just as an entire forest burns due to fire produced by the friction of bamboos. After this, he proceeded west where the river Sarasvati flows. Hare Krishna. Okay. So different analogies used here, like in the purport, in the verse and purport about a forest fire, and then Prabhupada, he closes the purport with such a worldly fire can be extinguished only by the water of the mercy cloud of saints, just as a forest fire can be extinguished only by rains falling from a cloud. Okay, so Vidura heard about that there was this great war, terrible war, great in the sense of very huge, 600 million soldiers died, big, and in a sense much bigger than the wars of today. And so I heard about that, and then so war. We use this term in different Socrative capacities. War is it's integral to the human context, to the material context, and yes, so as long as material consciousness, there's certain context, Janma, Mrityu, Jara, birth, death, old age, disease, context of disturbances from other living entities, whether in the form of a mosquito or wars or like that. And so this is part of the context where you'd say, well, no, because just less than 100 years ago, they formed the United Nations, and now there's unity, no more conflict, no more war. It's like practically a joke, right? It's practically a joke, right? But that's the idea, unity. Prabhupada would say, like, Prabhupada would go to New York, and you'd say he even spoke at the United Nations building like that. But you go like, well, whenever he goes, there's more flags, which means more disunity. There's more disunity, like that. And so we say, well, war hasn't decreased, so it's part of the context. And same with so much medical advancement, and they have cured diseases. So now there's like hardly any disease. No, that's not happening either. Okay. This is part of the context. And so disturbances from the mind, the body, from other living entities, from natural disturbances, disturbances from eating, sleeping, mating, feeding, defending, disturbances from the propensity to cheat and limitations and mistakes and illusions. It's all scientifically described. So the analogy is just material life, material consciousness. I'm going to Einstein's quote, we can't solve a problem with the same consciousness that created it. Okay. An example we often give, it's like at the turn of the century, 1900, there was a problem of air pollution that was causing disease because of the horses in the cities, the horsemen. So the environmentalists of the day, they were advocating for the development of this new invention called the horseless carriage, the motor car, that would solve the problem of air pollution once and for all. So they were advocating strongly, the environmentalists, and they won. And so the automobiles were developed. But in the sense, it didn't like completely solve the problem of air pollution. I mean, not completely. Right. So it's like, so as long as the, so that's material life is Maya Sukhaya. The cure will be worse than the disease. The solution will be worse than the problem. As long as the consciousness is the same, the consciousness of greed, lust, envy, self-deception, illusion, conditioning, etc., etc. Okay, so we just cannot get away from that point. It's about transformation of consciousness, and then the doing. So kind of transformation of the quality of being, and then the doing and the having will actually be helpful. Otherwise, if we don't change the consciousness, we're going to create. We might shift the burden from like the left shoulder to the right shoulder. Well, no more burden on the left shoulder, but now it's twice the weight on the right shoulder. Okay. Okay. Yeah, this is happiness. So the analogy is given. It's like there's many analogies given throughout the Bhagavatam, throughout Prabhupada's teachings. This one is blazing fire. Okay, so what's the first step? What's the first step to get out of a blazing fire? Is to realize that we're in a blazing fire. Mm-hmm. Right? Because like if the insanity is so entrenched, okay. Blazing fire. No, it's a nice day. It's like 72 degrees. There's a cool breeze. Like actually we're burning up. If we really put ourselves, because these analogies are there, and the acharyas are wanting us to get actually the actual situation is even worse. But we're kind of, it's like a dreamland. No, doing fine. People say, no, it's like this is quite a pathetic suffering condition. Quite a pathetic suffering condition for the glorious, eternal, radiant, free spirit soul to be trapped in a body that's subject to forced birth, death, old age, disease. Right? It's like suffering, misery, one after the next, one disturbance after the next. Many of them quite tormenting, quite terrible, quite tormenting, quite terrible. Yeah. So I'm in the midst of a blazing fire. Other analogies given. The Vaishnava poet sings, Hari Hari Bifale Janama Gunainam Manushya Janama Paye Radha Krishna Na Bhajya Janya Sunya Isha Kainu. Sings that I have the great fortune to take this human birth, but I've squandered it. I've wasted it. By not giving my life to the service of Sri Sri Radha Krishna. And so it's like I'm knowingly drinking poison. In a sense, with more knowledge, there's more responsibility. As we get more and more knowledge, we have more and more responsibility. And there's more and more consequences for squandering, for neglecting. It's a fact. So be careful. It's true. Right? Because knowledge is a deadly friend when in the hand of fools. Yeah, like that. So, right. So, with this one, like the human form, there's knowledge, there's advanced consciousness. So there's more responsibility. There's greater opportunity to do good, greater opportunity for deeper fulfillment and bliss, and greater opportunity to mess up big time. And as we come to spiritual knowledge, it's the same principle. It's like, let's say, in an organization, maybe, I don't know, the mail clerk makes a mistake. Someone doesn't get their letters on time. But okay, let's say someone, the CEO, he knows every facet of the organization. He gets a bigger salary, he gets a big office. But if he makes a mistake, it might be maybe 500 people lose their jobs and their families are on the street. Responsibility comes with knowledge. Responsibility comes with human form. Yeah. So the Prabhupada, really in the last sentence of the purport here, says, text 21, Canto 3, Chapter 1. Talking about such a fire can be extinguished only by the water of the mercy cloud of saints, just as a forest fire can be extinguished only by rain falling from a cloud. So Prabhupada's giving a metaphor that we sing every morning. Samsara davanalita loka Chanaya karunya gana ganatva Bhaktasya kalyana gunarnavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda. So that the spiritual master is getting mercy from the rain cloud, metaphorically, from the cloud of mercy. And the spiritual master extinguishes the blazing fire, the blazing forest fire of material existence, extinguishes the blazing forest fire of material existence. And I offer my respectful obeisances at the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is an ocean of transcendental qualities. It says lotus feet, the lotus metaphor, like the lotus is in the water, but it's not of the water. It's not touched by the water. Similarly, the pure devotee of Krishna, is participating in the material world. It's not an escapist philosophy. It's a very world-embracing spiritual approach, not escaping, participating in the world, but not contaminated by it. And to the extent that we give our lives to serving such a lotus-like pure saint, like sattva, same root there, then we also become transcendental. We also we're not oblivious to the disturbances. We're not oblivious to the disturbances, right? No, there's United Nations, so there won't be war or like that. No, through medical science, there won't be disease. That doesn't mean we should stop scientific efforts, but if the consciousness is the same, we'll just shift the burden from here to there. So this place is full of this, responding to the disturbances from the transcendental vantage point, responding to the disturbances, not getting absorbed in the drama of them. Same time, recognizing and responding to them with transcendence, with potency to inspire self-realization and connection with Sri Krishna's Supreme Personality of God. So that's what this lotus feet metaphor means. So, So here, there's water putting out the fire. Sometimes the water drowning in the ocean analogy is given. And just like we're drowning in the Pacific Ocean or Atlantic Ocean, then even like we could think on my own. What's that?
I'm going to fix it.
I'll fix it. No, I was on my swim team in high school. I'll be good. No, it's not going to help. No. It's like you're 2,000 miles away from land. Doesn't matter. You think you're a good swimmer. It's just not going to help. Okay. No, this is a terrible condition. So then the boat of transcendental knowledge, Krishna uses that metaphor in Bhagavad Gita, the boat of transcendental knowledge. And the Vedas and the captain of the ship is the pure devotee spiritual master. The Vedas, and so Prabhupada says that we, him, predecessor Acharya, we're giving you the Vedas, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Vyasadeva, we're giving you everything. We're throwing you the lifeline. Prabhupada says, and it's your job to grab the lifeline. No one's going to do that for you. There's no force. Like lifeline, don't need a lifeline. No, I'm good. No, good. Yeah. So like to realize, no, I'm burning up in a blazing fire. I'm in a hopeless condition here in the ocean. Okay. And here's a lifeline. So it's realizing like I'm suffering here. I'm suffering here. It was Arjuna's situation. There at the beginning of Bhagavad Gita. At first, he's kind of arguing with Krishna. And at some point, he realized, Apanya dosha patasvabhava prichami tvam dharma samuda cheta yat shreyasyan ichai buhi tanme shishasteham sarimam prabhata. Arjuna says, okay, look, I'm suffering. I'm confused. I'm feeling weak. I'm suffering. I've lost my composure. In this condition, I'm grabbing the lifeline of Krishna's instructions. In this condition, now I'm a soul surrendered unto you. Now I'm your disciple. Please instruct me, guide me. So it requires humility, realizing, I'm suffering. I'm suffering. I don't know what to do. I don't know which way is up. I've tried to take shelter of all these fallible soldiers. So to have the sincerity and intelligence to know what the real lifeline is, the Prophet says, no one's going to grab the lifeline for you. It's all there. The lifeline's there. Of course, it's a metaphor. An analogy doesn't explain everything. So in this process, it's not all or nothing. It's either 100% or zero. Even if we if we grab it 1%, that's for our eternal benefit. Neha bikram nasho state. Pachavayana dijite svapamapya siddhamase. Trayate mahatobaya. Krishna describes, this is there's no loss or diminution. Whatever we give, it's for our eternal benefit. Whereas if we get, my goal is to make $20 million or something. Okay, so well, at some point, even if I'm so-called successful, it's all going to be washed away by the tides of time. Tomorrow, 10 years, 30 years, I'm not going to have that same bank account in the next birth. So that's what in this song, the first verse of the song we sing in the morning, Gurvastakam Samsara Lalita Loka. Samsara means the cycle of birth and death. So Prabhupada often emphasizes that's the four pillar problems: birth, death, old age, disease. We can get mixed up, we can get all absorbed in other problems, but birth, and then within that, okay, then there's problems around eating, sleeping, mating, defending, envy, and this and that. It's all within the container: birth, death, old. So Krishna emphasizes Abrahma Bhuvanaloka Punarvartinarjuna. Mangu Pecha Tukantea Punarjanmana Vijite. Says even if we go to the highest planet, even if we don't believe in other planets, but the idea is whatever, go to Hawaii. Okay. Hawaii. Well, then, no, it's still birth, death, old age, disease. Okay. And there's planets with much greater enjoyment levels than Hawaii. So he said they're all places of birth and death, but repeated birth, they're all places of misery. Dukalayama mamu peja tukanteya, dukalayama shashvatam, not ruvanti, mahatmana samsatim paramam mama. Any place in the material world, it's a temporary place full of misery. To get that, not to be depressed, but to get that, okay, let me make my goal freedom from this whole cycle of samsara. Let me make my goal freedom from this whole cycle of samsara. That's spiritual intelligence. Otherwise, we can have PhDs or whatever other emotional intelligence, mathematical intelligence, spiritual intelligence, which is what counts most. Is like my goal is like no more forced birth, death, old age, disease. And then we can engage our emotional intelligence, mathematical intelligence in that goal. In that goal. It's a very world-embracing process, not to reject anything, then we engage our occupation, our mind, our relationships in that goal. Let's support each other for liberation from birth, death, old age, disease. Okay, so let's make that the goal. And then, as described here, so then we have, so here's the process. If that's our goal, to follow this tried, tested, and true process given by the bona fide spiritual master. That's the process. Don't get away from that either. It's described in the final stanza of that morning song, Sri Gurvastakam. Yasya prasada bhagavat prasado, yasya prasada nagati kutopi, Dhyayam stuvam stasya yashastri sandhyam, Pande Guru Shri Charanaravidam. But with the grace of the spiritual master, then we advance in freedom from birth and death. We advance in Krishna consciousness. Without the grace of the spiritual master, we're finished. We won't progress. Again, these are inviolable principles. These are freeing principles. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna uses the regulative principles of freedom. Okay, regulation can seem something like repressive. No, we follow the principles given to us by the bona fide spiritual master. Prabhupada used that term a lot, bona fide. In the name of spiritual teacher. Let's not even go there. There's just a whole lot of fluff and bluff and garbage going on. And just like if we went to, you're going to Miami today, right? So we can say, all these, I'm just borrowing that for a metaphor. Thank you. Just like, all these really drive on the right side, stop at a red light. They're so limiting and repressive. I'm a free person. I'm my own person. So today, I feel like if I get the inspiration, I'm going to drive on the left side, and red light for me means go fast, because that's who I am. So such freedom, of course, will curtail our freedom in a prison or a hospital or with debt or a morgue. So like, no, actually, I appreciate these regular principles. These regular principles of the road, they free me to get to my destination. Okay. So choose a destination, and then we have the regular principles to support us there. They're quite freeing. So we're encouraged to make that the goal. This we're hearing here in the Bhagavatam about the activities and pastimes of Sri Krishna, Vidura. So it's described that, like, by understanding these pastimes in their proper perspective, by understanding the transcendent, these are not mundane pastimes with Vidura and Sukadev Goswami and Krishna. They're not mundane pastimes, and by understanding their transcendental nature, then we're free from the cycle of birth and death. Then we're free from the cycle of birth and death. And okay, so I've used that term a few times, like spiritual teacher, spiritual master. So it's very sometimes, because like terms like Gurudev or Guru Maharaj, and in a sense they're bona fide terms, but sometimes Prabhupada would say like they're impersonal. He didn't really support them. He said, like, what's the personal name of Prabhupada? Okay, so that when we're talking about by pleasing the spiritual master, we make progress. And we're talking about by pleasing Prabhupada. And that makes it very solid. and concrete.
Mm-hmm. No avoidance.
No avoidance
You
there.
know what Prabhupada wants.
That's the thing.
You know what to do.
Yeah, right. There's really no room.
Just go out. You know, it's like a pet.
Yeah, or sometimes even like the guru principle. Yes, I'm devoted to like the great guru in the sky. And we'll hear things like that sometimes. So it's like, well, we're talking about, I mean, guru is a principle and a person. Because like there's really not much room. Like, well, of course I want to serve Prabhupada, follow him and please him, but I don't know what he wants. It's really not hard to know. There's just no room for that. I want to, but how can I possibly know? It's a mystery. But if like it's great guru in the sky stuff, then I'm so sincere, but I'm waiting for the revelation. You know, up and look at study Bhagavatam, read Prabhupada's books, chant at least 16 minutes per day. So these are, to whatever, there's no force, to whatever extent we want to grab the life of it.
Give this knowledge to others.
What's that?
Give this knowledge to others.
Share, yeah, it's completely in the line of Prabhupada to share. Prabhupada's completely Atmarama, self-satisfied, and he came to the West doing all austerities to share this knowledge. And so that's what it means when we say Prabhupada as our current and direct link to Sri Krishna's disciplic succession. It sort of means that whatever we hear, we're processing it and we're receiving it and understanding it through the pure lenses of the saint. And sometimes Vidura is called Saint Vidura of Srila Prabhupada. So now sometimes we'll read often, actually, because we talked here in this class so far about like liberation from the cycle of birth and death. And we'll find often in the books, in Prabhupada's lectures and books, we'll find often a devotee's not interested in liberation. So it's like, well, am I speaking against the teachings? So, you know, we want to see things in perspective. We want to see things in perspective. So to desire to realize who I am as spirit, soul, and to be liberated from cycle of birth and death, it's very commendable. It's very commendable. Compared to just like to desire just to entangle myself more and more, because I wouldn't see it as entanglement, to desire more and more indulgence in material enjoyment, whether gross or subtle. There's gross material enjoyment. Subtle forms are like desire for profit, adoration, distinction, subtle material. So just to make those things my goal, which is what most of humanity is doing. So desire, no, I want liberation from this. I can see there's no real fulfillment in material enjoyment. So that is commendable. It's not to be minimized. And then now it's described, describes that the personification of liberation. She is waiting at the doorstep of the devotee. How can I serve you? So a devotee, because in the different paths to liberation, it's not that all, so sometimes being kind of, probably the Sanskrit would be yatamata tatapata. Yatamata tatapata means all paths lead to the same goal. I gave a mystical emphasis at the end. All paths lead to the same goal.
That sounds so mystical.
Yeah, no, it's good. I'm a deep person. So, right.
I'm so a deep person.
Yeah. So just no. Let's just like contemplate how completely ridiculous that is. Okay. Let's go back. Let's use another Miami metaphor. Okay. If I take I-95 North or I-10 West, it all leads to Miami. Wherever I go, it'll all lead to Miami. It's very impressive.
Very impressive.
No,
That would be amazing.
that would be amazing. Right.
That would be
Okay.
amazing. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So it's like it's just like in just a very grounded way. Like, that's ridiculous. No, not all roads lead to Miami. Okay. No. Now, in a sense, it's like Krishna says, yeah, tam te tam stataiva bhajamyaham mamabart manubart te manusha parta sarvasha. In one sense, Krishna says, all paths lead to me. But that's like, he doesn't say ultimately, he says, everyone's following my path. Okay. Just like, okay, if I take I-10 West on the road to Los Angeles, well, I'm following the path of the government. And you use the GPS analogy. I still don't use GPSs at this late stage of technological development. But okay, so the idea is like, let's say if we do have a GPS set for Miami, then like, we keep going towards Los Angeles, it's gonna keep saying like, U-turn, U-turn, U-turn.
That sounds different though. Like all paths lead to the same place sounds different than everyone's on my path.
Exactly. Right. So, right, because so even if we're going backwards, Krishna, this GPS is Krishna in the heart. So we could be going like more and more entanglement and material misery and like that. So the super soul in our heart is going to be like, U-turn, U-turn.
They constantly speak.
Yeah,
it's amazing
right.
from these people. Like, come on.
Exactly. So that's why Krishna says, Suryadam Sarvabhutanam. Krishna says, I'm in the heart of all living entities, and I'm your best friend.
Sweet.
Yeah, I'm your best friend, right? And like that, and then material life, material consciousness means, and we're disregarding that guidance because just like I want Los Angeles, I want to go to like that.
But
Yeah.
I wanted to say that
Sure.
if you do go west on I-10,
Yeah.
and you continue, you cross Pacific Ocean,
Yeah.
you cross Siberia, Russia, Europe, cross the Atlantic Ocean, you may arrive in Miami.
Could happen. Yeah, could happen. Yeah. Right. So even if we go deep into the material energy, material path, that's also created by Krishna. Devi Yeshaguna Maya, Mama Maya Drive. Krishna said, this is my Maya. It's all my energy. So it's like it's all the government's roads. Right. We could, I'm going to Miami through Moscow. Right. But kind of like at the same time, it's like if I'm really sincere about like Miami as efficiently as possible, then it's like, well, you take 75 south. Okay. And then the turnpike, yes, precisely. Yeah. So right. And then even if not, okay, material condition life, staying with Miami here, that material condition life is like material condition life is like I'm not even aware that like Miami is a desirable goal. Okay. Liberation from birth and death. That Miami is a desire, I'm not even aware of that. But then Krishna is our best friend, and Krishna's pure representatives like Vidura and Prabhupada, they're always making schemes and plans like make that your goal and make liberation your goal. They're always making schemes like that. And then we have free will and we can ignore it like that. And then once we make it our goal, and, there's a lot of cheating to be aware of. And so Tesham Satatitam Bhajatam Pridipurvakam Tadami Buddhiyogam Tamina Mamuya Pyamtite. Krishna says, if you're sincere, I'll give you the intelligence. Let's give the intelligence to come to me. So, okay, so there's different paths that just go completely in the wrong direction. If Miami is the goal. Okay. Then there are other paths, like you could go 441. It can kind of get you there. It could go kind of towards through Tampa. It's kind of the right direction. So the Vedas are like that. They're like bona fide paths, karma yoga, jnana yoga. And then there's just what's called V-karma. That's just like, going through New York to London, and then the VPS is like, you're really in the wrong direction. we had the best friend in our heart. And then, so the path, you might say, Prabhupada uses the elevator, because Prabhupada sometimes uses like, okay, let's say there's a 100-story building. You could climb the steps, probably 200 flights of steps, but you can take the elevator. It says Bhakti Yoga, this is the elevator. So like, if you really want it, and you're intelligent and smart, you take the elevator. So the elevator to liberation, the elevation is Bhakti Yoga. And then once we're engaged in Bhakti Yoga, we're liberated automatically. And so for us absorbed in material life and material desires and just trying to increase our material desires, and just like, yeah, go for liberation. Really, you're in a blazing fire. This is suffering over liberation. And at the same time, like you might say, a higher level consciousness, whereas wanting liberation, that's commendable compared to most conditioned entities. Higher level consciousness is like, I don't care about liberation. I just want to serve Krishna. I just want to serve Prabhupada. And liberation is automatic. It's automatic. And a devotee is automatically liberated without even wanting the relief of material misery. I just want to please Krishna. And the liberation is there naturally and automatically. And so that's a very deep and pure devotional consciousness, but still we're encouraged to aspire for it. Like Chakudana Dilo Ye, Janme Janme Prabhu say, Srila Prabhupada, he's my Lord, birth after birth. What's implied there is like, well, if I look at myself, of course I'm going to take birth again in the material world because, look at me, and, I got a long way, got so many material desires. But that's fine. Let me take birth here or there. Let me take birth on this planet, that planet, New York, Miami, Alachua, wherever. Let me take birth. As long as I can serve Sri Krishna, as long as I can serve Prabhupada, let me take birth wherever. Svarga Pavarga Narikesh, Yapi Tulyarta Darshana. That's Lord Shiva speaking to his consort Parvati. Lord Shiva says, look at these devotees, referring to, they don't care if they're in heaven or hell. They're just blissful to serve Krishna. So this verse reads, I'll read the verse again. Text 21, chapter 1, canto 3. Tatrata sushrava suri vinashtim vanam yatavenu javani samshrayam samspardaya dagtama tanushochan sarasvatim pratyak iyaya tushtim. At the place of pilgrimage at Prabhas, it came to his knowledge that all his relatives had died due to violent passion, just as an entire forest burns due to fire produced by the friction of bamboos. After this, he proceeded west, where the river Sarasvati flows. Hare Krishna. Thanks for your presence and attention. I welcome any comments or questions or sharing of any sort.
I have a comment. My comment is like the last point you made about a devotee doesn't aspire for liberation.
Yeah.
And, when I hear that, I know it's true for a devotee. And I'm not a devotee.
Yeah, sure.
Like a devotee, it could be like a pure devotee.
Yeah, I love it.
And what I found extraordinary about the path of Bhakti Yoga is that there is many paths that lead to liberation.
Yeah.
From the cycle of birth and death. And they are bona fide paths.
They're bona fide paths.
However, if one chooses Bhakti Yoga to deliver themselves from the cycle of birth and death, just by practicing Bhakti Yoga, their desire for something else than the liberation from birth and death is going to develop.
Yeah.
Versus other paths, they are leading to that.
Yeah.
And there is no development of any other desire. Yeah. So that's what is extraordinary, is that, okay, let me have that desire of being free from the cycle of birth and death. And let me practice Bhakti Yoga to free myself from the cycle of birth and death. Yeah. And then within the process of Bhakti Yoga, my desire is going to change. And it's kind of the major difference between Bhakti Yoga and other paths that
Yeah.
could lead to the liberation from the things.
Thanks for that point, Molly. Yeah. In the fourth chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes karma, vikarma, and akarma. I'm thinking of that here. So there are different karmic paths, and they're bona fide, and they will lead to liberation. Varnashram, karma yoga, mystic yoga. They're different karmic paths, that they're encouraged in a sense. And that would be like getting to Miami, but going south, but maybe some back road or something like that. And then there's vikarma. Vikarma is just like, this is just self-destructive. You're going the wrong way. You're going towards Canada here. This is just self-destructive. Even if we do vikarma, Krishna always loves us and is always giving us good guidance, make a U-turn like that. And then there's akarma. Our karma is completely free from karma. That's bhakti. Because these other paths, because the one liberation, it's basically taking a stand. Here's what I don't want. I don't want these material desires anymore. I don't want, okay. But those other paths, I'm like, okay, and positively, what do you want? Because liberation in itself is just like, it's
free from something that you were previously.
Exactly, yeah. It's running away from something that is a blazing fire, but it's not running towards anything. Whereas bhakti is running towards, I do want positive devotional service. I do want to do kirtan. I do want to. Yes, I do want to get, right. So like liberation, this kind of just material dancing in the disco, I don't know, it's probably called the club or whatever. 50 years behind the times, thank you. Okay, so material dancing, material eating, material relationships, I'm finished with it. I don't want that. Okay, and that, if we're paying attention, that is frustrating stuff. There's no deep fulfillment there. All right, but then those paths, they don't get possibly what do. And those paths, this morning after japa, we probably use the term transcendental trick. We're reading about Haridas Thakur. There's some transcendental trickery. Like, oh yes, I will fulfill your desire just after I finish these 200 rounds. You just sit and listen, and then she got, what I really want is Krishna consciousness. That's transcendental trick. So these other paths are kind of a Vedic transcendental trick to bring one to bhakti. And if they don't bring one to bhakti, then it's just like, it's not going to be completely sense. It's empty. So bhakti gives, because negation of matter is not in itself spiritual. Negation of matter, there's some intelligence there that this is just futile, empty stuff, but in itself, it's not positively spiritual. Bhakti gives the positively spiritual, which gives the higher taste. And then we don't even, as we progress in that higher taste, we lose, we're not even trying to stay away from the lower taste. Just when we lose the taste for the lower taste.
And a question. As yesterday at lunchtime,
yes,
with Casey and Stephanie and Izzy was there, we were speaking about, the bad things, and the anger, the greed, earthquake, or the bad things that people can desire. How come I desire to be greedy? That they all come from Krishna. And how how do we understand? Because everything, Krishna, Ishvara, Parama, Krishna is the cause of all causes, and everything comes from Krishna. How come Krishna gives us things that separate us from him? And doubts, all those things. We had a nice conversation, but we want to hear from you guys.
Oh, okay. Well, I'd be glad to hear from you about your conversation. Well, so because Krishna is loving us, so he's reciprocating with our desire. Love means free will. Love means free will. If I create a robot and at scheduled intervals, the robot speaks, David, I love you. How can I serve you? Kind of like, it's not going to be that satisfying. because I know I just you know, I created this machine to do that. But like if a human being or a dog or a cat voluntarily chooses to love me and serve me, that satisfies the heart. So Krishna gives us, we can say like, why does the government create prisons? It's actually the compassion of the government. Ideally, it's not just to like torture the prisoners. Because like, okay, for those who choose not to be good citizens and to follow the laws, which is the happy path for everyone. If I follow the laws, then I'm free to go on vacation when I want and to go to use the road. But if I choose not to, so the government has a place for those people. It's called the prison. And ideally, the prison is for liberation. It's for rehabilitation, for the prisoners to get like, yeah, okay. Yeah, I made a mistake. When I get, I'm going to follow the laws, and then I get to really be happy and not violate others and like that. So we want. I want to do my own God project. I don't want to serve Krishna. I want my own God project. Right? I want the David Wolf or Dhira Govinda. I want to be the center. I want to be applauded like that. All right. So then, you know, in my own God project, what I found is not everyone always cooperates with the David Wolf God project.
No.
No. And that's very disappointing for me. It's very, no, I want you to, I'm frustrated. Yeah, and I want you to feel bad for me. No, I've noticed that the universe does not comply with my David Wolf God Project script. So then I get angry about that. And I'll have temper tantrums about that. And that's no fun. And then, so like super souls there saying yeah, this isn't going to work for you, really. You can continue with your God project like that. This isn't going to work for you, this lust, anger, greed. Because I've also found that even when the God project works according to my script in some small way, it's still not like really joyful. But then I want more. I want to control more money and more resources and more like that. And so like, it feels like it's like never satisfied like that. So like, so then I think, oh, okay, turn towards Krishna. Nah, you know, but the GPS is always like that. So that they're like the prison bars. Kind of like, yeah.
You turn the volume down on the GPS machine.
Yes, exactly. Right.
Which,
Yeah.
You're free.
you're
free.
Then you're free. You're free. No guilt.
So they're the prison bars, and we got ourselves into this prison. That's what we create. And then ultimately, it's not just to punish, but to like, okay, because there's a way out of the prison. Direct the propensity for desire towards serving Krishna through his pure devotee Srila Prabhupada. Then there's no more prison bars. Then we're free to actually be joyful.
It's interesting you were speaking about not about you, but yesterday I gave the example of babies. You know, babies when they are born, they have no choice but to, because they're fully dependent on the mother and father, they cannot love. But that love, you know, is kind of so conditional. Yeah. And so they're almost like robots. Yeah. You don't find a baby doesn't love their mother. Right. Even the most terrible mother, the baby and the child, in fact. Yeah. It goes on for a while. Yeah. That blind love of the child. But then, and also I was thinking like, maybe that's why a lot of people have dogs, because there is that blind love coming from the dogs. Yeah. You know, like, and versus like with other human beings where there is more free will in terms of love, of really exchanging love between two human beings. Then because that free will is there, it's not as automatic or as conditional to create love coming from someone else. Yeah. And so it's like that. But at the same time, when we do receive love from another human being, it's usually more satisfying than the love we receive from a baby or a dog.
Just because there's more free will.
Because there is more
Yeah.
free will.
Yeah, nice.
And so,
Good.
so we can imagine that Lord Shri Krishna is even more, like, okay, we can be satisfied with dog. Or like, okay, more elevated, we can be satisfied with the free will of another human being who choose to love us. We can imagine that for Lord Shri Krishna, it's even more elevated. The kind of love you want. The kind of love you want is like just free of any condition.
Yeah.
Like free of any condition. Because the dog, if you don't give him food every day, I'm not sure how long you will continue to love me.
It's really a business arrangement.
It's quite a business arrangement, but they give freely. Like it's nice. It's nice. But with human being doesn't work as well. But then with Krishna on the spiritual platform, it's not going to work as long as there is any condition. Like any condition is not going to work. Yeah. And that's because he wants that extraordinary relationship only and nothing else. He's not going to settle like we settled.
Right.
But he's not going to settle for anything but that pure relationship. Yeah. Just like when you say dog.
Yeah, dog. As the free will rises, then it means more.
It means more. As the free will rises, it means more. Obviously, like people sometimes have a dog and then they get in a romantic relationship. The dog doesn't mean as much. The dog's love.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. Damayanti.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like, thank you for fast like, it makes sense, grab the lifeline, like, it's logical, like, everything is logical to me.
Yeah.
Like, that we could be genuinely loving, devotional servants of the Supreme Creator of everything and the absolute truth, and not retain, like, everything feels logical to me, and like I'm really enthusiastic, like, about the philosophy and about the practice. Like, well, I don't know if I'm really enthusiastic, but there's many times I feel this like a lot of like yes, like this,
yes.
This agreement. And, I have that feeling a lot, and especially in association, like at a class or like a discussion, I feel like really fired up, and it makes sense. And then like when I go home, like day to day, I don't feel that, like, I don't feel devotional.
Yeah.
But I know what I should do. And then it turned into like should underneath should, because that's the logical thing to do.
Yeah.
But I want to keep the consciousness of like I get to, or like that's one thing is like feeling like it's logical and I should do this, versus like how do I cultivate like genuine devotion and get to.
Yeah, everyone's a pure devotee during Bhagavatam class. No, everyone's a pure devotee during Bhagavatam.
Here we are.
Yeah, here we are. Yeah.
Look at us.
Right. And then what about at 11 a.m. or 4 p.m., 8:30 p.m.? What about when we're on our computer and the minds? Well, I mean, way Prabhupada would respond, like, well, that's where discipline comes in. That's where discipline means like, yeah, because I'm intentional about this goal, like, I'll do it whether I feel like it or not. You're familiar with the early devotee in the Second Avenue of Prabhupada, the first center he established, and he showed his new students how to bow down to the altar. So a few days later, Bhakti Ray said, Prabhupada, sometimes I don't feel like bowing down. And Prabhupada responded, first you bow down, then you feel. So that's action leading to insight. Meaning, that's where pure spontaneous devotion means that, like, our senses and our mind and our intelligence, we just naturally go to loving Krishna, whatever Krishna wants naturally. We're not in that state. We're in the conditioned state. Condition means we're accepting something as true that's not true. So that means we're required to discipline ourselves. That's called sadhana bhakti. That leads to raganuga bhakti, the spontaneous. But we're not at that state. So it means doing the heavy lifting of sadhana bhakti. Yeah. It applies to, like, if we want to get a university degree, or we get really expert at playing a sport or playing a musical instrument. Sometimes we might not feel like practicing all the chords, or practicing for 8 hours a day on the court, or studying those books to pass the test. But okay, that I want this goal, and that goal will bring me fulfillment. And gradually, the child is like, go to school, do your homework. And it's a discipline for the child. But then gradually the child, in many cases, then they develop a love for learning. Like, they don't need to be told, like, study the book. Maybe the child chooses, I'm going to choose to go to university, and choose to get a master's degree. Love for learning. So that's sadhana bhakti. Means we control the lower self with the higher self under the guidance of the sadhana given to us by Srila Prabhupada. It means the material mind and senses need to be forced sometimes.
I'm thinking about patience, like
Patience. Yes.
I think I'm getting patient.
Yeah.
Judgmental of myself, like, oh no, or I just like I just feel like my mind is, I'm sure it's true for everybody that we need to, like, be patient with training our own minds.
Yeah.
And also it requires humility, like, wow, look at where my mind can go, look at my habits.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm just thinking, like, because I want to keep walking on this path, but I need to have, like, constant humility and constant patience to deal with the mind and the conditioning. Like, this is really my state,
Yeah.
and, like, even if
That's your vehicle.
my vehicle, my state of consciousness is, like, it's very humbling if you're really going to go down this path, like, a servant of God, and then eventually aspiring to be pure, like having a pure devotional heart. Like, it's just really humbling constantly, and it's because there's so much conditioning. So yeah, I could use some patience. Where do you get patience from? Where does that come? How do I?
What you're saying, Damayanti, is, like, so completely aligned with Bhagavad Gita, the Goswami, Rupa Goswami describes, if we want to progress on this path of bhakti, essential qualities, patience, utsanishchadaya, patience is, like, right at the top of the list. And Krishna,
restriction. It's a nectar of restriction.
That book.
That book.
Krishna says in Bhagavad, Arjuna says in Bhagavad Gita, just like you're saying, he says, okay, Krishna said control the mind, but the mind's like it's like more difficult to control the mind than to control the wind. Chanchalam hi mana Krishna. And Krishna says, yeah, you're right. The conditioned mindset, and through patient practice, we get more and more effective at it. I see there was a hand up. No, there was a hand up. Krishna. Yeah, patience, and as I said, this process is joyfully performed. And then, my experience is that for me as the soul, as C.S. Lewis said, we don't have a soul, we are a soul. We have a body. For the soul, it's joyfully performed. For my false ego, for the mind, for the intelligence, I often feel like a struggle. It's like to get up early at 3:30 a.m. out of my mind. But now, for me, the soul, it's always very blissful, whenever I follow the process. So that gets, to make that distinction. This is joyful for my actual self. Gajendra Prabhu.
there's a lot I appreciated. And there's two things that came to me that I just wanted to mention. Did you mention Bhagavad Gita 9:22 at all today?
I did not.
Okay. So I wanted to mention that, and I just been searching for it, but could not find it. It's something Prabhupada had said in a purport of chapter 3 of the Bhagavad Gita. And so what I'm looking at related to the whole discussion is, there's a goal. Like, so Krishna is the goal. And ultimately, of course, pure bhakti, pure devotion, service is the goal, unconditional. Along the way, it popped into my mind. There's in Bhagavad Gita 9:22, Krishna says, "But those who worship me with devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack and preserve what they need." There's also not finding it. Maybe you'll recognize it, but in Gita, in one of the purports of 3, Prabhupada mentions that, or conveys somehow in my mind, that even though we might not be unconditional devotees, that we still, in the process of pursuing Krishna consciousness, can still have a full or complete sense of Krishna consciousness. In other words, even while we're engaging in the process of becoming pure, it's not like we can't have a complete sense of being at that time. In other words, Krishna will work with our stage of conditioning so that we can have the feeling, even if we're not unconditional, we can still have that sense of completion along the way. And I just bring it up because I think, to me, just sort of having a mindset of feeling encouraged, of wanting to make whatever sacrifices or investment, or just even choosing Krishna consciousness as the goal instead of some other place or some other plane or some other object. I find that this is, and going back to Gita 9:22, I mean, that's really powerful for me. Like, Krishna, whatever I have, he's whatever I value, truly, Krishna is preserving that. And whatever I feel I may lack, Krishna's got that. And so it's just really those things that what I'm referred to, they for me, they provide a sense of that what I'm putting my faith into and having experienced as even though there's sort of a goal, so to speak, in one sense that's distance, that I've got it right now too. Just by fully applying myself to the process right now, I've got it.
Thanks for that, Gajendra Prabhu. I appreciate that combination of references. Nanyas Chintayantam Mam. Krishna preserves what we have and provides what we lack. So you're like, it's missing, but like Krishna's got it. Krishna's got the completion. And then your reference from the third chapter Bhagavad Gita purport, that whatever our conditioning, like, yeah, Krishna's ready to work through that. He's ready to work through that. Very, very encouraging integration of references.
By having some other goal, it's not like we're going to miss something. Like, yeah, Krishna sounds good, but he doesn't have this, so I'm going to have to go over here for a while and sort of take care of that. It's just, I believe Krishna in the matter, my experience.
Thank you.
And one more thing that's really important, and maybe I shouldn't say it, but actually, We are all cooperating with you, Dhira Govinda. I mean, you are it. I mean, we are totally with your plan. You just have to realize.
Okay. So everyone is cooperating with my God project. I'm just not realizing it. Okay. Nice. Thank you.
Yeah. So have a good day.
You too. Jai Srimad Bhagavatam ki.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.